So following Daniel Jacobs' victory over Chavez Jr., there's been a lot of speculation online about what his next move should be. There's been actually a video posted of Daniel Jacobs getting into it with Rosado. There was a bit of back and forth going on between them, and obviously Daniel Jacobs actually said to Rosado that he doesn't actually get anything for fighting him. So it seems that from that footage, obviously Daniel Jacobs is looking for particular fights that will further enhance his legacy and, more importantly, give him a payday. Because when he was going back and forth with Rosado, he kept thanking him for giving him $1 million. So it's obvious from that sentiment that he's actually looking for fights that could actually provide him with the most amount of money. Now, as you can see on the top left graphic, Daniel Jacobs actually wants a rematch with Golovkin, Jamel Charlo, Saunders, and Callum Smith in 2020. He wants one of them fights. Now, in my opinion, if he was to fight Golovkin in a rematch, I reckon he would actually beat him. The first fight, in my opinion, actually went for Daniel Jacobs. I think it wasn't a robbery because it was a close fight. It could have went. It was a close fight. It wasn't a fight that was very. It wasn't a flat out robbery, but I actually think Daniel Jacobs won that particular fight. They could have actually given it to Daniel Jacobs, and obviously you can make an argument because Golovkin landed more jabs and he did actually knock him down. But in my opinion, I feel like Daniel Jacobs actually won that particular fight. So I feel like if he was to fight Golovkin again, I think he would beat him because in the first fight, Golovkin was closer to his prime, and he gave him such a good fight. I actually think Daniel. People talk about how Canelo got robbed, how Golovkin got robbed when he fought Canelo, but I actually think Daniel Jacobs gave Golovkin a better fight than Canelo actually gave that Golovkin. Apart from the second fight, actually, when Canelo was actually walking Golovkin down. But in my opinion, I think Daniel Jacobs won the first fight, and if he was to fight Golovkin again, I think he would beat him because Golovkin is obviously past his prime. If you look at his fight against Devachenko, I don't think he performed as well for that particular fight. It was almost like he was actually swimming upstream. It was a fight that was very difficult for him, and he took a lot of shots. Obviously, in the first round when he knocked him down, it looked like it was going to be a routine fight, but I just think I just think, in my opinion, that Golovkin is getting closer to the end, and he's just looking for a cash out fight. So I don't think he'll take a fight against Daniel Jacobs. He's probably going to settle for a third fight against Canelo Alvarez. He's probably trying to secure a third fight against Canelo Alvarez because Daniel Jacobs is, although he would get a decent payday from Daniel Jacobs as they're both in the zone. I actually think he might avoid him because his first fight with Daniel Jacobs was so hellish and difficult. Obviously, the next fight that I think he could fight is Daniel Jacobs can fight is against Jamel Charlo. Jamel Charlo, I think that's a very winnable fight for Daniel Jacobs because Daniel Jacobs, he's a very systematic boxer in the sense that he does seem to um, he's a boxer puncher, so he does have the ability to box. I feel like Jamal Charlo does actually struggle against movers. So if he could actually get on his bicycle, he could make that a very, very difficult fight for Jamal Charlo and may be able to beat him. Saunders, I think that's more of a 50-50 fight. In my opinion, Daniel Jacobs just edges it against Saunders, but I believe Saunders could actually pull off the upset. The problem is, obviously, Daniel Jacobs has been very active and he's been fighting relatively good better opposition than Saunders. Saunders obviously won a super middleweight title, but I feel like it's been against relatively limited opposition compared to Daniel Jacobs. Daniel Jacobs has been actually putting himself out there more, trying to fight obviously the Canelos of the world and obviously Golovkin. So he's been up there, like trying to fight the best of the best. Callum Smith is a very interesting fight because Daniel Jacobs, just like Callum Smith, is very big for the weight. Um, if you look at, I believe Callum Smith and Daniel Jacobs, when they're off season, they probably put on 20, 30, 40 pounds above their fighting weight. They walk around way above their fighting weight. Like I heard rumours that Daniel Jacobs used to walk around at around 190, 200 pounds. sometimes when he's not in camp. And obviously the same thing with Callum Smith. Callum Smith has got a huge 6'3" frame, so God knows how he makes super middleweight. But obviously Callum Smith looked very vulnerable in his last fight against John Ryder. But I think stylistically, Daniel Jacobs fights nothing like John Ryder. Obviously, he's more of a boxer puncher, while John Ryder in that particular fight against Callum Smith was more of a pressure fighter. He was someone who was just coming forward constantly. So, in my opinion, that's more of a 50-50 fight between Callum Smith and Daniel Jacobs, as they're both big guys for the weight. Obviously, Daniel Jacobs does enjoy a height and reach advantage over most of his opponents, but when he fights Callum Smith, he's going to fight another fighter in Callum Smith that actually does have some of the physical advantages that he enjoys over other opponents. So what happens in that sort of instance is that it's almost like a mirror match where when a pressure fighter fights another pressure fighter, it's usually a war of attrition where they're both trying to out pressure each other, but they're both pressure fighters. So it, it's almost like when an immovable object meets an unstoppable force. They're both. It's very difficult for either one of them to actually get an upper hand over each other. With obviously that Daniel Jacobs and Callum Smith, both of them are fighters that enjoy height and reach advantages over their opponents. So when they fight each other, it's always going to be like their advantages are negated against each other. Usually, when, for example, when fighters fight, it's usually a fighter's strength is another fighter's weakness. So if a boxer fights a pressure fighter, they can just move, and obviously the pressure fighter struggles with a fighter that moves a lot. But in this instance, both of their strengths are their size, and if they're both going to fight each other, it's going to negate each other. So it's a true 50-50 fight. But obviously, he does want the fight against Callum Smith. Obviously, he might see something, but in terms of pedigree, you could say obviously Daniel Jacobs has fought way better opposition than Callum Smith ever has. So, in my opinion, out of all of these fights, he beats Golovkin. He just somewhat edges it against Jamal Charlo. In terms of Saunders, he's way bigger than him. He's fought a better level of opposition, so I believe he beats Saunders. But if Saunders was to beat him, it wouldn't surprise me because Saunders is so talented. Against Callum Smith, that's more of a 50-50 fight. Not because Callum Smith is so skilled, but because he enjoys certain physical advantages. Not advantages over Daniel Jacobs, but he fights someone in Daniel Jacobs that has the same physical advantages that he enjoys over other opponents. So if you've got two fighters who have that same physical advantage over each other, it can negate each other. So it's a very interesting fight. Tell me what you think below. On my video, obviously, and just generally, what do you think Daniel Jacobs should do next for his career? All of them fights are very plausible fights, and obviously, a few of them are pay-per-view fights. But it seems like Daniel Jacobs is definitely an elite fighter, and the fact that, in my opinion, he beat an undefeated Golovkin in his first fight actually proves that. In my opinion, I think Daniel Jacobs should try to get the Golovkin fight because I think he beats him. Obviously, if Golovkin struggles to get a fight against Canelo, if they're both with the zone, it's the next plausible fight to make. So it could be a relatively easy fight to make. It's just whether Golovkin wants that smoke because obviously he fought him the first time and he saw how difficult Daniel Jacobs was to fight the first time. If he does fight Golovkin, I reckon he beats him. And a lot of people have made arguments that obviously the first fight against Canelo was a draw. The second fight, a lot of people think Golovkin won. So if Daniel Jacobs does beat Golovkin, you can make an argument that he's the first man to legitimately beat Golovkin because the two fights with Canelo that Golovkin fought were very much marred with controversy, and a lot of people thought that Golovkin won. So obviously, it's all subjective. But if Daniel Jacobs was to beat Golovkin, then you have to say that he's the first one to decisively beat him because I think he decisively beat him in the first fight. You could have easily have given that fight to Daniel Jacobs, in my opinion, but obviously Golovkin had the star power. They were trying to make the Canelo fight, so I'm not saying they robbed Daniel Jacobs, but you can see why the judges were going to give it to Golovkin, so that fight between Canelo and Golovkin could have happened. So that's my opinions on Daniel Jacobs. Where do you think he should go from there? Tell me your thoughts below, and I've got more videos coming your way, so subscribe to this channel and we'll see where we go from there. Peace out.